Welcome back, listeners, to Lost and Searching, the show that aims to help you discover and cultivate your greatest inner leader by asking some tough questions that help to answer that question, where we chat to people with various perspectives that can help us discover some dimension of that. And today we're chatting to Jonny, a founder, content specialist, and a podcast host. His business is called The Story Club, and it helps founders of small businesses stand out in a crowded market by telling their story, by helping work with people to bring out the story of who they really are, what they really do, and whether the purpose is raising money or gaining new customers and anything in between. If telling a story can help you achieve it, he wants to help with it. And I really loved this because I've really come to believe that in life, everything that isn't a fact is an opinion, and every opinion about ourselves is just a story, a narrative that has been weaved, whether by ourselves or by someone else or some combination of both, that we tell ourselves or about something else, and that gets used because it's easy but isn't always beneficial. And so we talk about everything from the stories we tell ourselves to how telling the right story can help you achieve your goals, and so much more. So I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us for today's chat. I do hope you enjoy, and if you have been, our numbers of listeners and followers have been increasing recently. The show is fairly new still, but we're getting really deep into its niche. Rebranding is almost complete, and lots of great things are happening as a result of tests and your feedback. If you're enjoying, please do share it with someone else, and perhaps more importantly, follow this show on any platform you're on, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or something else. Hit that follow button, leave comments and anything else you can. Share it with folks you think find these topics, these hard questions to discover these parts about ourselves valuable, because that is the way that we help others, help ourselves, and of course that helps me help more people like you by growing the show and bringing more epic people on board. It's the best way to help others and pay it forward, and it's free. So thank you so much in advance. All of that being said, I appreciate you, and let's get into the episode. Everything in life is a story. Everything is a narrative. Everything is some combination of words we string together to create an idea of some kind that we either are told or we tell. And it can be about anything, including ourselves. One thing I've been reflecting on recently is who tells us the story of us.
So I feel you're coming at me with this because I chose the business name, The Story Club, which is a bit on the nose now that storytelling is such a phrase. Who tells us about us? I mean, if we're starting off deep, Seven, it's close family members, parents, ourselves, life experiences. It can go one of two ways, right? People can take everything they've ever been told from other people as gospel, and that's the old metaphor, right? Some people let the waves of life dictate where they go, or they pull out a boat and an oar and they direct that. Don't know where we're starting off philosophically, but I think that's the fair way to say it, right? It's like, who tells the story about ourselves? We tell ourselves the stories, but that comes from a lifetime of experiences. And obviously, if that leaves you with a negative story about yourself, you need to do something about it. And if you're in a good place, then it's a point of privilege, right? If you're in a good headspace, it's easy to say you've got a good life, you've got a good story. But again, it's the experiences and people that impact that.
To be able to change the story, to rewrite the narrative, you need to know you're living a story that you want to change in the first place. So in other words, it requires some recognition of the way I'm living right now, or the life I'm living right now, or the story I'm telling myself right now is just that, it's a story, and therefore it can be rewritten, and we need to want to change that, right? You can help someone else change, but you can't change them. You have to change for yourself. You have to make that choice. How might someone listening know it is time for them to change their story?
I'm no life advice therapist type person, but I think
You've seen a lot of
it's
people's stories, and you've worked with a lot of people to help craft their stories.
true. But I get people at the point, the language and the message I give out speaks to people who want to try something different or want to make a change. I think if we go to the people before that stage, you know, I know, anyone watching or listening, you know, plenty of unhappy people who are miserable in their law job, or maybe like their marriage, or decisions they made in life. It's easy to say to them, if you're unhappy, change it. And a lot of life coaches I actually know, and someone who I worked with, whenever I was like, oh, I don't know about this, and they were like, just do it. And I filmed at a retreat they were running, and they had a bunch of other people running running their own businesses, who wanted to run their own businesses, but they were too scared because one was in tech sales and was like, oh, my dad, he's Greek. If I went off and told him I wanted to move into nutrition, I can't. So again, it's from a point of privilege. It's easy to say, just do it. And I keep been saying that for years, right? But people you said it yourself, people have to make that decision. And then you've got other life coach type people who talk about pain and pleasure, right? If you knew what that better life is, if you're in an okay stage of life, like it's comfortable, it's not too bad, you'll never make the change. So it's almost like you need that life to go horrible, maybe that relationship to go incredibly toxic, or that workplace to just become unbearable to actually kick people into doing it. Most people won't. So when you're asking the question, how do you get people to change their story? Put them in a hell of a worse situation than they're in and watch them act.
And when you're working with people on crafting and telling their stories, how do you start? Let's say someone has just come to you, the time has come, I've been trying to make this thing work for ages, I don't know how to tell my story, I'm not even sure what my story is, if I have one. Where do you start?
You just start asking people questions. Everyone undervalues their own life experiences because they lived through it. No one actually realizes the value in what they know. The majority of people, that's why you get things like imposter syndrome. They just don't. I would say it's a very British thing, but the more I'm learning, it's a very human thing. Brits are in the very extreme end of just never talk about anything good in your life. Don't talk about yourself, and just kind of like stay hidden in the crowd. Keep calm and carry on. But the moment you start like asking people questions and you start probing something that maybe happened in school, something that happened with their family, a bunch of entrepreneurs and founders I know were all expelled, but they don't really care. But you ask them about it. How was that experience? How did they go through it? And they're like, well, you know what? I never really fit in. I was always thinking differently. I was doing that. And it's like, well, look where you've ended up. And it's about the right questions and just setting a timeline. Where were you then? What happened then? It's almost like a podcast interview, right? When you're getting to the story part about people, you'll ask them. And then I'll never do this. And I assume you never do it. People say do the 5 whys. When someone gives you an answer, say why. And then you actually get to the bottom and they get revelations.
Once in a while. It's very rare that I'll pull that out. But I noticed that kind of thing works well when someone really has no clue why they are where they are right now, or why they're doing the thing they're doing. It's when there is something that is so unconscious that the only way to move forward is to bring the deepest why conscious again. The questions you ask and the answers you receive, what are the patterns that you've noticed? What comes up most often? Because you work with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And to me, entrepreneurs are important for this like leadership equation because it's where we see leaders most often in society now, right? If you're leading a business, you're leading not just yourself, but others, or you need to be, or you will be. And, other examples of leaders, politicians, community leaders, whatever, entrepreneurs is just the most frequent place we see it. So working with entrepreneurs, you're seeing a lot of leaders or aspiring leaders with having certain challenges, let's say, more often than others. And I'm interested in what the patterns are, what you see most.
That one's actually quite easy. Money, status, chip in the shoulder. I very often find that's actually what drives people. I've spoken to tons of founders and a lot of them aren't passionate about the problem they're solving. They just saw an opportunity for a business. And I think you do find that with a lot of founders. Yes, there's some who'll say they experienced something themselves, But you've got plenty of founders there who've no experience in maybe it's health and safety. You know, it's unsexy stuff, but it's where they saw opportunity. And that's opportunity, you know, maybe it's for the passion of building a business, but why are they passionate about building a business? Because they want that payday, they want that early retirement, or they want the status, or they want to prove everyone at school they were wrong about them because they got expelled, because they were terrible at exams.
Yeah.
So those are the three. And they're not bad things. People would say, oh, if that's what motivates you, that's terrible. It's not. If they're making a positive difference, and you know it's a net positive overall, and they're not harming anyone, why does it have to be some amazingly moral reason?
Well, the default answer, the assumed answer, would be the story.
Yeah, I think the thing is with a lot of business owners now, you know, now that it's the marketing buzzword, and B2B businesses especially are looking more at advertising and marketing. Yes, the story thing is coming into play. And for a lot of these guys, the reason they've devalued story so much is it's meant nothing to them. But for a lot of these business owners, it's a tool for more success, more status, more opportunities. People want to go on the podcast because they want to get known, because it's good for business, or it's good for making life easier. It does make life easier. People come your way. The more open, the more you tell your story, the more it connects with people. Now, don't get me wrong, they may start the journey the wrong way. But what they find is the altruistic side almost evolves into them, because they find someone comes up to them and is like, oh, when you told that, I related. That meant so much to me. And it could be a total thing of them still devaluing their story. But then when people start coming up to them being like, this helped me, this did that, then I think more people see that shift of doing it for the right reasons. But you've got to be careful, right? Because you can't start getting a certain amount of ego is good. Too much ego can go the wrong way. So it's funny, that's the evolution I see the most. People who feel they tell their story because they have to, because it's modern, because it's hip, because it's in, because it's good for business, because it's good for X, Y, Z. But then, you know, if their story changes someone's life, then you're talking about it getting to that really special point.
It's also probably a little bit therapeutic, right?
For them.
To finally talk about things that they thought were just totally meaningless.
Oh, speak to any I know lots of people in the personal branding space, and we all say the same thing. You almost become a client's therapist, because they do, because these are people who run businesses, they've got staff, they can't talk to their staff about their problems. There's this thing that's been going on for years, it's the loneliest position, CEO. And I'm a member of a couple of founder groups as well. And someone actually posted something in one of them a week ago being like, how do you handle boundaries with clients? Because when things aren't going well for them in the business, you're their go-to. They're used to talking to you because you've drawn out things. They feel close. They feel a connection with you. And, you know, if you are a relationship person, you feel that as well. So it's definitely a meaningful experience for them, I think, because no one asks them as well. No one asks them. No one goes that deep, or they've got their guards up.
Yeah.
But not with you, the service provider, the friend, the coach, and all that. So that's always quite an interesting evolution of the relationship.
What's your story? Because to help other people tell their stories requires a certain requires being able to bring out things from them, like you just alluded to, that they don't usually get to talk about, which means asking the right questions. It means caring enough. It means being empathetic enough to really understand from their position how they feel, what they do, why they do it. And in a world where tech takes over more of our lives, storytelling is becoming bigger and bigger. So I'm really interested in the story of the person who helps the storytellers.
Yeah, it's to cut out some irrelevant bits. School, classic, founder-esque type thing. Messed around, didn't really care about it. It was one big joke. You know, like, what were exams? They were memory tests. And back then I wasn't like, oh, this is conformity. I wasn't even like a cool rebel. Like, it's not like I wasn't like doing cool stuff, or like, I was just like a little mess around kind of kid. Then finished school, went to Aberdeen University, again, messed around, played a lot of Call of Duty with my friends and stuff, did politics and international relations, had no interest in being a politician. Then kind of, do you know what, it's interesting, I was following people at that point because one of my best mates was meant to be going to Aberdeen. Then a lot of my school friends and some uni friends moved down to London, so I went there and ended up working in recruitment. And that was when you could say I was letting life just be dictated, which is what we were talking about, right? I was just following what other people were doing, new experiences, seemed different, felt like, we spoke about this when the cameras were off, it felt like progress. And it probably was, but at some point you have to give yourself end dates like we were talking about, or decide when certain things are going to happen. So I knew I wanted to go traveling. I was like sacked off the job when I was 25, went traveling for 6 months, but working in recruitment, I knew how people viewed CVs and resumes with gaps in them back in 2017. Like a career break was almost a career ruiner. So I did this program called the Mountbatten Program. It was a work study program, sends people from outside of America to New York to work for a year. And to summarize, I basically found Gary Vaynerchuk over there, classic millennial stuff.
Nice.
Got one of his books. At the end of it, he gave his email address. And I was like, you know what, I've nothing to lose. I emailed him. I was like, listen, I'm in this financial technology company. Sounds cool. I was just looking at Excel documents, trying to find discrepancies. I was like, but I'd love to, on my days off, I'd love to come work with you, come to VaynerMedia. And I actually got invited in. He actually emailed back. So I went in, and obviously Gary has been telling his story for years. He's the guy who, what are we at, 8, 9, 10 years ago now, was talking about document, don't create. Because that's the thing, people overthink their story. Absolutely, the right starting place is just document what you're doing, your day, what you're doing, your thoughts, your theories, your philosophies. So spending a day with his team really woke me up to that. And also it's when they were starting Vayner Talent, which is what they did for Gary, which was have videographers, Instagram managers, Facebook and all that. It was doing it for founders, which now personal brand agencies are all over the place. So that I was like, wow, okay, there's something here. Then when I had to move back to Glasgow, I went into the family business, chain of men's retail stores, doing classic millennial stuff like we need to do video content, we need to start telling our story because it's a 50-year-old family business.
Yeah.
And none of that was out there. So I did cheesy things like family videos. It was coming out of the pandemic. I wanted to get real human stories. So I'd grab some unfortunate soul from one of the other stores because we did Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and a few others. And we'd walk the streets trying to find a local hero. So we'd be like, it was like 20,000 step days, going up, being rejected, being like, hi, listen, we're looking for a local hero. Somebody gives back without expecting anything in return. Honestly, some of the stories we got from that were unreal. A guy who called a lonely older guy in a different city, someone whose like wife died during the pandemic and stuff. So we took them into Slater's and got them a suit. And it was like, here's just a wee treat, for everything you've done. And they were in tears. And I was just like, this stuff matters. And even then, people are suspicious of brands and companies. That's why a lot of people don't like doing it. It's come to the personal brand level. But genuinely, Seven, the impact these stories had at the human level was huge. And then from a marketing standpoint, when we cut it down to micro content and put it on TikTok, absolutely banged. It was going up to 6-7 figures. So I was like, right, we've got the stuff I'm passionate about, which is people's human stories, and it also does well in marketing. And that's when I left Slater's, and I was like, time to start helping people figure this out.
What was it like to be surrounded by the energy of Gary and his team? Because I imagine it's quite different from what it can be like over here.
I like being around Americans, to be honest. It's a different attitude. You've got, on one end of the spectrum, you've got the UK, which is one extreme, and the US is probably a bit too extreme on the other side. Like, there's got to be a middle ground somewhere. But British people, tall poppy syndrome. If you stand out from the crowd, you're going to get cut down. People are going to come, start being like, who do you think you are? Who do you think you're doing this? This was much worse in 2017. Okay. Personal branding is obviously huge now. People understand it. Yes, you can still get stick for it, but the results and the data prove it's worthwhile. But then you've got America, which is almost maybe a slight overinflation of self-importance to some extent. But I was just in Nashville last week, and I reached out to a few people on LinkedIn. The energy, I hate using the word like the hustle, but the after all these meetings, I just went because I just wanted to meet cool people. But at the end of every meeting, they're like, is there any way I can help you? It was
interesting.
How can we help each other? How can we join the dots? How can we connect? And you just don't get as much here. So obviously with Gary and the team in the office, it was just infectious. And that's why being a founder and starting my own business is great, because you do get that in the entrepreneurial community. And that's why obviously the passion of the business is helping founders, because the loudest voices are coaches and marketers, which is Rich coming from a over-talkative marketer. But there's these cool founders doing cool things. They've got a great product, great business, they're a great person, but they're just not talking about it. They're not sharing their story.
Way, nice segue. Do you think we need to instill more of that energy in more businesses?
1,000,000%.
How? Because I wonder if people get more used to sharing what's in here and personal brand becomes the new trusted brand, then who you are and how you express yourself in the world is your brand. So if we have a country full of people whose brands are I don't want to stand out and I'm not enthusiastic and I'm not very collaborative, then we have too many really boring personal brands that don't stand out. That might sound harsh, but that's a thought that goes through my head. Like, how do we make this transition if what we're really talking about is not just what's out here, but really what's in here?
I think the first step with that is letting people know personal brand doesn't mean you have to have 1 million followers and be known by everyone. It can be what's true to you. You could be a introverted, quiet person who works in supply chains, but you want those opportunities. So you can just speak about supply chains. You don't have to share your personal stories, but your work story, your service story, your business story, how you've evolved in business, how you've grown in that business, problems you've solved in that business. It doesn't have to be this extreme journey of self-actualization. It can be true to you. Does that answer the question? Because you were saying, how can you get people to talk more about it? And really, I think it's an understanding that it can be, it will be uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be what you see online with a lot of people with crying selfies and stuff. So it's an education piece to letting people know, really.
It's this forcedness we see. Like, if I scroll through TikTok or Instagram now, the quality feels really high relative to what it was, let's say, like during COVID, just a few years ago, because the sea of content has just evolved so much. So now to stand out, you have to be really above and beyond. And then at what point does this become like really overcomplicated and things like that? And I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. Are you familiar with this concept?
Yeah, the Pareto principle.
So exactly.
Gets 20% of the results, or the other way
around. But the most important 20% gets you the most important 80% of your results. So it's not do 20% of the work. It's do 100% of the 20% of everything you could be doing that is most important. And so I'm trying to reverse engineer this to figure out what I need to be doing. And I know that I can lean into the confidence I have in the value that I bring and who I am and I pointed earlier, what's in here, what's in my heart, what's in not just in my mind or my head, but what I really feel. And I just wonder if that's enough to stand out. And if the answer is yes, well, what if someone doesn't feel like they have that?
I'd ask what the end goal was. Right? For you, it's you want to grow your personal brand.
Yes.
So it's more about volume and numbers. So you've got to start thinking about who you want to target, like the basics everyone has to do. Who you want to target, your message, your unique offering, whatever that may be. But then you have to kind of game the system. You have to think really strategically about hooks, talking about large general things that pulls in as many people as possible. You can't go super specific. Like that supply chain version I gave, right? They just want to draw in people for business. So they just talk about supply chain the whole time. You you need to talk about universal themes
Yeah.
to draw in as many people as possible. And then even you need to go more strategic, like maybe heavier, more standout editing so that people watch it and hang around for longer. Also the hook at the start of the videos to really pull people in. You've got to spend a lot of time looking at the data, what videos are working, what's getting reach, and then just doing more and more of that. Whereas for someone who just wants to grow within their industry, it's a bit simpler. It's just talk about the business stuff. So people need to decide what the end goal is, really. Because for you, what you got known for, you target specific podcasts that have a large audience. If someone just wants to grow in their business, they just message the 3-4 in their industry, or they start their own if there are none. They have people who want to do well in their industry have it easier than they realize. People who want to go viral and big, it's the girl who did the chicken shop interviews.
Yes.
Hot wings, these unique ideas. You've got to think of a crazy YouTube series that's different and start doing it.
And one of my concerns is niche. So how much do you think people need a niche? Because most people will say, what's your niche? That isn't niche enough. But actually what you just outlined is you can have a couple different strategies. One is the go niche strategy. The other is a don't. How much do you recommend people go niche instead? Like you just said, it's a lot easier.
Depends on the industry. Someone, supply chain, recruitment, whatever, just talk to your ideal customer, solve the problems there. For someone who wants, I'm thinking of the best way to put it, because it really does, I hate giving the it depends answer, but it really, it is so situational. I can't recommend to someone to go big or go small, because there's every chance that small could become big.
When you say there's every chance, is that an oversimplification a little bit? Like, you're right. If as you say, you need to do so much new stuff, you need hooks and you need good editing, it's very hard for something to accidentally go viral these days. I mean, it still happens, I'm sure. But the smartest strategies I see are like in music, for example, an independent artist makes themselves go viral by kind of engineering how it works, and they've got their own music. So that part's sorted.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But you only ever hear about the winners in those situations.
True.
There's hundreds, thousands of people trying to do that reverse engineering, whether it's in music or acting or dancing. There's all these people doing and trying these different things to stand out. Some people do just get lucky. You can't beat a really good strategy, speaking to the specific people you're trying to get in front of. Hence why if you're going more niche, it is easier, because if you're going general, you're trying to appeal to everyone. But you've said maybe you're going down the leader route, right? All you need to do is speak to some top level leaders, which you do with your podcast, find out what their problems are, go deep, and then just start speaking about it. And then, at first that's just leaders, but then some of that becomes, some of that's already universal themes, right? It's what problems can you solve for leaders, right? They're not sure how to manage Gen Z. Okay, that could be a very interesting topic for not just people at the top of the game, but mid-level managers. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I would always say it's like content is like a business. Speak to anyone who's run a successful YouTube channel or social media channel. It's like a business. They start small, they focus on one thing, they build an audience there, and then they find it either just starts trickling to other people, or they're like, right, how can we make this go to other people?
Yes, you have to start somewhere.
That's what I would always say. Start somewhere. Because even me, right now it's founder-led video content. But I do need to think bigger. Because I can speak on LinkedIn or wherever all day about founders should be doing videos and this and that and all that. And you can keep banging the same drum. But everybody needs video content. I get approached from coaches, personal brand managers, even though my language is directed at founders. And even though we don't classify video as a universal theme, it's still, people want it. So if it's leadership wisdom, people want wisdom. You just have to accept, people what, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, but people want big numbers. People are like, I need 100,000 views. If you have 1,000 people watching your videos, that is huge. If you have 350 people watching 80, 90% of your videos, that is huge.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the drop-off rate and the engagement rate.
Yeah, but that's if you were doing that wanting to go mass market thing, you need to look at those numbers. You need to see where are people dropping off.
Okay.
But again, for that smaller person who's focusing, they might only have 10 people watch their videos, but if those 10 watched 100, it's a lot easier to get to.
Yeah.
If you want 10,000 people to watch your videos, you need to go really granular.
I love this, because the question I'm really trying to have us answer today is, how do we write and rewrite the narratives that we really want to tell, which requires starting with the noticing, and then once you've done the noticing, asking the right questions to set yourself a new foundation. Before we started recording, you asked me the question, what do you want to be known for? Where in the equation is this question? What do you want to be known for? Why is this question important?
I think it should be the first question, because if you don't know what you want to be known for, you don't know who you should be speaking to, you don't know what you can offer them, and you don't know how to deliver it. So
then you have nothing. If you've got none of those four things, you've got nothing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know what you want to be known for, then you're just going to be flailing. I've not dealt with people who don't know what they want to be known for. People get to a certain age and they either realize they hate their job and want to do something totally different, or they want to commit to it. But either of those sides, usually if they want to do something different, they have a pretty good idea of what it is. And if they want to commit to whatever they've been doing for the last 10 years for the next 30, they know they want to be in it.
You mentioned imposter syndrome. Is that something that you see getting in the way here? Like, when you ask me the question, what do you want to be known for? I know what I want to achieve and what I want to build. I kind of have a sense of the personal brand I want to build. I do know a lot of founders who, even if they have some of those things, they go, I don't know if I'm trying to be known for anything, or maybe I want my brand to be known for being just the best at what it does, which is really vague.
Yeah.
Right? So what gets in the way of me deciding, or someone deciding, what they want to be known for? Is it imposter syndrome, other things? What are you seeing?
Potentially commitment issues, funnily enough.
Interesting. Okay.
Nailing yourself down to one thing is a big decision for a lot of people.
Yes.
If you choose leaders, again, leaders is a bit more exciting.
Sure.
I choose video. Video is always changing. It's different across platforms, styles, whatever. It's creative. It's not a bad thing. If someone's in tech law or CRM systems, do they want to commit to that for 30 years? That's something. So commitment issues, definitely. Imposter syndrome, for sure. As there's a thing being floating around recently where it's, I think it's an Alex Hormozy quote. It's like, the only way to prove to yourself you're not an imposter is by proving yourself right every day. But I know 50-year-old CEO business owners who've absolutely smashed what they've done, but they still aren't confident in what they've done.
Yes, it's
So
the bank of evidence is all you have to know who you are, but you have to judge the evidence objectively. But by nature of being you, you're subjective.
No, you're totally right.
Yeah,
People can't be objective about themselves. So definitely imposter syndrome, definitely commitment issues, and just the classic fear of what others will think when they start talking. Again, that's more the British side of things.
Okay.
Who do you think you are? But that's just a projection of other people. And everyone knows that deep down. They're like, it's not me, it's them. But again, people can know things but still be frozen by them.
Yes, that in itself is a narrative that needs to be rewritten. So you've got to change a narrative so that you can change your narrative for your business.
So like, honestly, it's some people who are smart, confident, tough. The fear of public or silent judgment in social media prevents people massively, and it's just a shame. Because then it's the wrong people talking most of the time.
Yeah, you've got whoever wants to be loudest being loud, and there are only a few different reasons why you'd want to be loud. One is I kind of see two groups. This is probably too generalized, but I'm seeing two big groups of thought that succeed on online content, social media, and things like that. Group number one are people who want to be loud because they like the attention, and that means you'll do whatever you want for the attention, which the algorithms support you to do.
Sure.
So you can be a total ass, you can be really negative, you can just create toxic play. Like Twitter is just a nightmare now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's group number two who understands that for other people to receive your gifts in this world, if that's the service your business does, if that's the wisdom that you have, they need to know who you are. Yeah. Right? In other words, it's the positive reframing on marketing.
But it's funny. I speak to so many people in the industry, and it's like, so what do you tell people about storytelling? And so many people say, oh, you just reframe it. Just tell people that you're not doing it for you, it's for your audience. Do you know how easy that is to say? I've said that to people, but maybe I've not said it with enough conviction because I think it's bullshit to an extent, right? Because you can tell people you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for them. Again, it's that British cynicism. It's like, but I'm kind of doing it for me. So it doesn't marry up. But again, those people I met when I was in America, that's what they came back with. They're like, oh, I just reframe it like I'm helping them. And one of the guys said with so much conviction, he was like, you could save a life with your story. And that's why I brought that up earlier, because you can make a difference to someone. I wasn't ready to say the commitment of you can save someone's life, because even to me, again, it's that British American thing. I'm like, that's a bit extreme to say, but I get it. Yeah. But it is about helping the audience. It is about serving people, but it still feels very self-involved for a lot of people.
I think the intention is important, right? If your intention is just, I'm just going to say a different thing so that it sounds nicer, your intention was the same. So if your goal, the reason you got into business was to make money, and you just say that it wasn't, the intention hasn't changed. And people are smart, like they suss these things out.
But that could, to get into what we spoke about earlier, that could be why a lot of British people maybe still haven't jumped on the personal branding wagon or find it a lot harder than Americans. Americans maybe have more conviction or convince themselves stronger because you see it over there, it's boom, it's like, yes.
Yeah.
Whereas some Brits maybe do doubt themselves, even if 99% they're like, I want to help people, I've got this knowledge that can help people. That 1% saying, yeah, but you're doing it for you, might be enough to stop them. And that is, I would say it's definitely a barrier. And that's why the UK market is still not even close to as mature as the US market.
What can we do about that? And whose role is it to do the doing to get that done or make that change? Hey everyone, I wanted to take one quick sec to talk about a new partner that I am so excited to announce I have on the show, an agency called Untapped. Untapped exists to put your brand in the world's pocket with beautifully crafted, high-impact mobile experiences. They've worked with brands like Barclays, EA Sports, American Express, and even the UK government. They're known for creating powerful apps with intuitive, seamless interactions that drive customer engagement and elevate brand recognition. But it isn't just tech development. Their expertise is bridging phenomenal quality technology with beautiful design to create the highest quality product possible that takes your users on a real journey with you. You may remember Will, the founder of Untapped, from episode 13 of the podcast. If you haven't heard that chat, I highly recommend it because it shows you what kind of no-nonsense, sleeves-rolled-up kind of people he and the team he's built really are, and it reflects in the kind of work that they do. They want to make their clients' work recognized across their industries and drive real game-changing value, something I've personally experienced and appreciated working with them myself. For businesses who want to take this next step in their journey, Untapped can help with everything from tech creation to brand design to product marketing and so much more. All right, the links are down below. Check it out. And now back to the episode. I can show up with the best intentionality possible. If everyone around me just assumes I don't have it, am I just screwed?
It's a tough one because there'll always be the cynics.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a big fan of, if anyone came to me being like, I want to go viral, I want to talk to a big audience, I'm probably not the right person for that. Mm-hmm. But if they want to speak to a specific person, I'm very good at that. Mm-hmm. If they want to speak directly to the people they can help, I can help there. And people are a lot more comfortable doing that as well because they know they can help the people in their industry. They know they can help the people they've got knowledge from.
Yeah.
So to answer your question of whose responsibility is it? Every individual who really thinks they can make a difference. And how do we get there? Baby steps. Little by little. Because even the people I work with, LinkedIn's getting noisier. Talking head videos are the baseline. If I can push people from talking head videos to maybe doing a humorous video, something that stands out, then great. But that happens 0.1% of the time.
Really?
Everyone,
you think it's that small? It's like...
Totally. Everyone's just comfortable talking to video, not even comfortable. They struggle with that.
Yes.
Talking to camera. But I'm telling myself I'm on a journey with a lot of them. Baby steps. They don't know this necessarily, but I do say, listen, you need to start thinking bigger and move that way. But even you, your video podcast, this is your entry into videos, telling your story while allowing others to tell theirs. But then you're already thinking, what's my video content? And that's how everyone should be. Do what you're comfortable with, which is usually talking head or video podcasts. I started with a video podcast before my own actual content. And just going on that journey. That's it. It's slow and steady. Building a business, that reference I made earlier, it's exactly the same.
These little baby steps, it feels like there's a formula that we're kind of creating here, not to turn it into too much math, because I'm not really a math person, but if it starts with the awareness that there's a narrative that you might not like or that you might want to change your narrative, whether it's your personal one or one that someone else has about you.
Well, going at that personal level, that's one of the best things about video content. If we really want to sell it in, you dictate the narrative. People can say stuff about you. And if you're not there to defend yourself or talk about yourself, nothing. But that video identity of yourself is what sticks in other people's minds. And that's why it should be authentic. Because, again, another buzzword thrown around, right? But if you're doing videos and they don't feel like you or look like you, you'll feel like you're living a lie. But from the dictating narrative standpoint, videos are very powerful for that.
When I'm training entrepreneurs, I've got a saying I love to use to blow their minds. I wonder if you've heard this before. So at any one time, there are 3 versions of you that exist at the same time. There is who you are. There's who you think you are. There's who others think you are. And there is who you think others think you are.
Is that because that was in that samurai show?
I don't remember where it's from.
No.
I have no idea.
But we were talking about sort of Japanese philosophies earlier, like Ikigai. That's definitely one as well. And it's true. Like most people don't know who they are. Not in a bad way. Like you can't blame them. I wouldn't say I fully, I have days where I'll sit down and try and reflect and whatever, but today's world doesn't make that easy.
You've really got to take time to do that reflection. Then even then, is it objective or is it subjective, like we said earlier? So you have that awareness. Do a little diagnosis of this. Is this actually you, or is this what other people actually think of you? Which is it? And then, okay, great. Now I know this. Now I need to ask myself a few core questions. This one of what do you want to be known for is one of them. You outlined another 3 after that. I mean, are those like 4 questions you mentioned earlier, the 4 that you always start with that you think people need to know?
Was that when I was like, what you stand for, who you want to serve, what you can offer them, and how you're going to deliver that?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And what you want to be known for. So that's 5 questions.
Yeah, but there's levels, right? Because the deep level you were talking about, I don't know if people really need to get into. Okay. If it's going into who am I really? Of course, I'm sure potentially down the line, if the path you choose or what you start trying to do is totally counter to who you are and what you enjoy, you're going to have a bad time sooner or later. But
I think you'll notice that, right? If that time comes, you have some kind of a feeling, if it's a gut feeling or whatever, and then deal with that when that happens, right?
Yeah, like it's such going into like the whole barriers and blockers for people. It's so nuanced. Like it really is complex.
Absolutely, yeah.
Back to like people not even taking time to reflect because they're busy. They've got families, they've got jobs, they've got kids, they've got a commute. Like when can they do some deep personal self-reflection? It's not, like I've not done it. It's not entirely necessary for figuring out what you like and what you want to do. But I wonder, and I'm sure there's studies out there, if the people who do that really take the time to be like, what do I love? What am I good at? And really bring all that together, they're probably the people who end up the happiest.
Yeah.
I'd imagine. The people who take the time to reflect. But who's got time for that?
We choose what we do with our time, sort of. If you're a parent, I know it doesn't maybe feel like it or whatever, and there are always certain situations, even if we have a full-time job and a business on the side, if our life is in our hands, what we do with our time is what we get to choose what we do with our time. I have a belief that, I say a belief, I've really noticed this really powerfully within others and within myself, that we get to choose how well our time is used. So I have a big thing I do with younger entrepreneurs where we go through, because younger entrepreneurs, let's say you're like I know an 18-year-old entrepreneur right now who's really good at what he does.
Yeah.
But people will put stigma on you. You're just 18. What could you know? Blah, blah, blah. And the question I'll always ask people is, does it matter how much time you've had if you've spent it really poorly and you haven't reflected on what you've learned on that time, you haven't used that time effectively, you haven't used it wisely? Would you rather 1 year of really intense, deep work and a lot of reflection? And we do know statistically that reflection improves performance. Taking out time at the end of a day to reflect on what you've learned, if you have to do the same thing the next day, does increase your performance directly, very quickly. And if you stack that up day by day after a year, you get really deep, intense stuff. Would you prefer that as timeline A, or timeline B, 40 years goes by, you reach your midlife crisis and you're like, oh my God, I hate what I do. What would I? And one person's much older, but are they really any wiser? So we know that reflection massively improves how we perform, and we can conceptually understand that how you choose to use your time, and if you use it being introspective enough to ask yourself the right questions and listen to those feelings that you have, speeds up the process. And I think this is the thing is, if you are meant to be in this world and you are good at in this world doing a certain thing, right? Being a supply chain business leader, for example, would you rather get there at the age of 40 or 30? If you really want to sell a business, let's say your goal, your motivation for starting a tech startup is to sell it for 8-9 figures, whatever, so you can retire. Would you rather start the journey at 20 or at 30 or at 40? Because the sooner you start, the sooner you get there.
Sure.
We do have little feelings all the time about if something is right for us or not, that we often ignore. Like you said, if the whole world is like, sit down, that can be a really loud voice. Is your internal voice loud enough to motivate you instead, to be the counter, to make you stand back up when the rest of the world is telling you to sit down? And only when we create the space to listen to what we really want does that voice get louder. We can't counter the loudness of the world out here without a louder or equally loud voice in here. And if we don't give that voice any time to be heard, we're not going to realize that it's trying to help us counter that unhelpful narrative from the outside world.
Yeah, but even if people spend the time to find that voice, right? It's like you said, those outside voices, that's what stops people. And you always hear the stories or the stats. It's, people on their deathbed, they always regret what they didn't do.
Yes.
Following the opinions of others. But everybody knows this. We're in the information age where everybody knows what the regrets dead people have. They know risks and rewards, but it still isn't enough to fully motivate people. When I was in Nashville, I got in a taxi and I was chatting away to the taxi driver. She was, used to be a guy, trans, black woman in Nashville, Tennessee. Name was London Monroe. She went to London once, loved London. Marilyn Monroe was her favourite hoe, hence London Monroe.
Nice.
She was talking about, you can imagine how tough it is being a black trans woman in Nashville. I was like, why don't you just get out of here and go somewhere? And she was a tattoo artist as well as doing the Lyft and Uber stuff. She said, because I'd be too embarrassed if I went somewhere else and I had to come home. Even though she's in Tennessee, like getting looks, not entirely comfortable. But even that's not enough to push her to go to a state where she probably feel more welcome, not feel whatever she's feeling there. And I was gobsmacked. I almost went into like motivational speaker mode in the back of the taxi. I was like, yeah, but listen, you go, you come home, whatever happens, happens. You've got to go and try. You'll only regret not knowing. And she smiled and nodded, but I guarantee you that made no difference.
Yeah.
So the voice and judgment of others is excruciating for people. And then if you actually, my superpower is I kind of hate pretty much everyone.
Nice.
Like, so the moment you like, obviously I'm being dramatic, but obviously like you have to do something extreme to stop caring about what other people think. And if that means kind of like emotionally distancing yourself from humanity, not saying I'm not like human, but you know what I mean? If you start being like, right, well, fuck them. Are you allowed to swear in this podcast?
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? You're like,
do
you know what I mean? If you're like, fuck those people, fuck them, they're an asshole, like, never liked them anyway, it's easier to then just start doing what you want because then you stop caring about people's opinions. Like I did a post a month ago on LinkedIn, and it's annoying because it was all the screenshots from the WhatsApp chats with like my mates over the last
I remember this
8-9 years.
Actually, really powerful,
and it was like friends like rinsing me, it's guy banter again, British thing. I expected it. Everyone talks on LinkedIn, the kind of posts you should be doing now is how I did something so that you're not preachy, is how I did this. And I would love to do a post like how I got over the bullshit from my friends, how I got over caring what other people think, why I just went for it. And I don't have an answer. And I genuinely think this goes back to what we said. How do people become who they are? Life experiences. There's stuff that happened in my life where maybe I followed the crowd for too long and stuff, and just one day I rejected it. Maybe one day I was just putting posts out and I was getting made fun of, but then over time you get made fun of less because people just get used to it.
Yes, they see it more.
I don't have an answer.
Exposure bias.
It just has to be the reps. You do it once, you tear off the Band-Aid. Maybe people will talk about you behind your back. But there is no, I think there is no secret sauce. You have to just do it.
I heard a story recently from a doctor, a medical professional, and they're talking about helping patients get over addiction. And they'll roughly see two different responses to someone who successfully gets over an addiction. One is the mainstream, what you get recommended, which is to slowly wean off of it. Let's say you smoke, you use the patches instead or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Option two is, no, something just snapped and I went cold turkey and it was fine. And it's like, but why does that work for some people and not for others? And in medical, it's still assumed that it's just some little genetic difference or some little predisposition that we can't really measure that just exists in some people and not others. Some people can go cold turkey and it genuinely works, and some people just can't.
And that's why I keep saying, like, you can't generalize. Everything is so situational, from that nature over nurture kind of thing. Maybe I spent enough time in the social media world. I knew the risks of not starting to do video content, or maybe I knew the rewards of doing video content, and that outweighed a couple of stupid WhatsApp messages. We've said a few times during this podcast, people have to do what's right for them.
Yes.
And back to what we said, like, they need to figure out what they want to do, what they stand for, so they can serve the right people. if they want to get on video or if they want to start telling their story, they just have to decide they want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not for the right reasons. Maybe it's for terrible reasons. But like not to make people's lives. Maybe it's like selfish reasons, I mean, but it will still help people inevitably.
Mm-hmm.
That's the deepest level people have to go. They have to just be like, why am I doing this? I wanted the rewards that came with being on camera. It's allowed me to start my own business. It's allowed me to help other people do it. It's allowed me to get, time freedom. Mm-hmm. That's one of my biggest drivers in life is independence, freedom, the ability to do what you want when you want kind of thing. Not asking permission to go to the dentist or I've never been in one of those businesses, but where your times when you go to the toilet. I think and that's why you're most likely to find entrepreneurs are the ones who do it because they've taken big risks. But everyone who wants something more or is unhappy where they are, negative, positive, needs to just do it. And they can spend £500, £1,000 on a speaking coach or whatever, or they can just do it.
You heard this thing that we're far more motivated by what we might lose than by what we might gain.
Yeah. That's why I keep saying I'm not sure what I did, so that's why I keep balancing the risks and rewards.
This is the thing.
Because I'm not sure what was for me.
It sounds like, the answer could very well be all of the above. It could be, and it very likely was, talking like nature versus nurture. Actually, we know it's nature and nurture, and it's just about the balance of the two. And in a similar way, you might have been both motivated by losing something you could now see for yourself in the future. You went over to America, you saw Gary and his team, it gave you all this energy, and you were like, what if I never, maybe this went through your head, did it? Maybe you tell me, what if I were to tell you you'd never experience that again? How would you feel?
You mean that energy and drive?
That energy, yeah.
I'd go out my way to find it.
Exactly. So if you like, I gained this thing, but that thing's all the way over there in America now, I need to create it for myself. So now you have something that you could lose, which even if it's just an idea and it's something that wasn't physically yours, it wasn't like this cup in your hands, but it was something that you could lose, plus what you now stood to gain. Maybe some combination of that was just now so much stronger than what you thought you might lose if you did it. Like, if I will lose more not doing the thing than doing the thing, I'm going to do the thing.
Totally. And we do live in a noisy world full of distractions and people vying for attention. And I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm not saying it's a positive thing. But if you want more or you want change, that's a good enough reason to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier people are turning more towards personal brands because there's a lower level of trust in company brands and established brands. And we see this on something like LinkedIn where, you might follow a company page, but if they post, are you really going to engage with it unless it's like boosted or whatever, but people, and you get to know an individual as being their company, that's a completely different world. How do you think we got to a place where we trust brands so little and trust people so much more? Why do you think that's the case?
Most companies are pieces of shit. Let's be like,
it's a very Scottish answer.
But do you know what I mean? Like, okay, so maybe not the smaller, medium enterprises, little cute family businesses or something.
Sure.
But everyone sees the scumbags of the big corporate businesses, especially in a cost of living crisis, and they're inflating their prices anyway. All the jokes is about, the chocolate bars are getting more expensive, but they're getting smaller, so you're getting double hit. So like they don't care about you. And people aren't going to differentiate a lot of time between the good companies and the bad companies. Yeah, you've got B Corp here, a charity there, but I don't know how much of a difference that actually makes to the day-to-day consumer, except people who are looking for it. Like, I'll only work with B Corps or I'll only buy from B Corps. But people, and this is where the British cynicism will come in, right? People feel more connected with people. They like the sound of their voice. They like the cut their jib. They like what they say. They feel they get a better read on an individual. Now, obviously, one of the big problems that's happening and will continue to happen is you'll get frauds. Mm-hmm. You'll get people who put on a good front or being something, then you meet them and they're not that. Mm-hmm. So there's obviously going to be nuance, like everything we've discussed in today's topics. But people like something they can touch, they can feel, they can meet. Even e-commerce brands, their evolution from just being online only, they started renting out shops and pop-ups so people could come meet them, meet the people behind the business. People trust what they can see, even if it's not entirely authentic. They still trust it more. Mm-hmm. Like, there's the Story Club, but people probably say, oh, Jonny Rose does videos, which is a problem I'll need to deal with in the future because the business does need to become more.
Yes.
But that's how powerful it is. People know your name, they meet you, you go to events, they recognize you, you talk to them. It's just an instant connection. And I also think the pandemic's played a part in it becoming big as well. Zuckerberg was obviously betting that people would go into the metaverse, and it was going to be totally disconnected. Whereas now, I'm finding people are craving connection more. Every new week, there's a community popping up, or there's an event. Mm-hmm. Like everyone's running an event, and it's because maybe it's the pandemic, maybe it's just like the state of the world, maybe it's people feel more disconnected than ever because of technology. It's in right now, and unfortunately, marketers ruin everything. So the word community is being almost cheapened, like authenticity and storytelling. But really finding your people who get you, not just entrepreneurs, even, friends, school, people who've known each other since school or whatever. They go on different trajectories, some have kids, some don't, some whatever. So then they distance. And it's obviously male loneliness is a huge thing. So guys, even more so, start looking for community, people in their wavelength, and get them. And I think personal branding does that to an extent.
Yes.
You're giving people someone they can connect with and relate to. And some people will like that person, and some people will hate that. My videos will come up on LinkedIn. Some people will be, oh, it's Jonny, I like what he says. Some people will be like, fucking hell, mute that guy. It's just is what it is.
You're familiar with the concept of revenge tourism. Have you heard about this?
I've definitely heard, but remind me.
So post-COVID, people didn't get to have their holidays, so they went on more holidays. People who lived in countries where they receive more tourism, like island countries or whatever, instead of having 2 peak times of the year, now the whole year would be a peak time of the year. So tourism took a massive hit and then has rebounded enormously. So like a Richard Branson putting a bunch of money into Virgin Atlantic to keep it alive probably actually worked out pretty well. And so like we're trying to build more planes, right, to keep up with the demand. We physically can't build planes fast enough. So this kind of thing is bouncing back. I do think it's a big chunk of it is the pandemic, but I don't think it's just like revenge community building and in-person stuff because of the pandemic. I also think it's the pandemic woke us up to the fact we were feeling more disconnected. It pushed us so far in the other direction, we were already starting to feel a little bit. And now this is a combination of things we're likely really craving in person. You talk about the word community has been cheapened a little bit. I think that's really interesting. I think another word that's been cheapened is connection, because we're connected to each other on LinkedIn or Facebook, but we feel so disconnected from other actual human beings. And so how do we get that? By going to something like an event. Now, the reason why I think this is really interesting for personal branding, which you kind of started to touch on, but I want to get your thoughts really clearly on this. As we start to wrap up the conversation, I've started to say that you are your personal brand. Or maybe it's the other way around. Your personal brand is just who you are. So if you're known as being, the example you used earlier, the guy who shows up and is a bit quiet but listens a lot or whatever, that's your personal brand. Your brand is as the quiet, introverted person who listens or whatever.
Sure.
So everywhere you go, you are telling people who you are, what your brand is by nature of the way you show up. I think one of our responsibilities as leaders is to ask ourselves, is that thing that we're communicating who we are, what we want to communicate that we are?
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier, right? When you're doing videos or building your personal brand, you can dictate that narrative.
Exactly.
Now, that narrative better join up with who people are seeing in public.
Yes,
Because if it doesn't, people don't like that level of disconnect. People, quite simply,
jarring, right?
like to put people in a box. If someone seems the antithesis of who they appear online, that's why I think these AI videos won't go that well. If you've got some introvert who's getting their AI clone to do videos and then they get invited to an event, speaking podcasts, and they're not what people expected, you've got trouble.
Oh, that's really good point. That's really, really smart.
So it's one of the best things about building your personal brand is you can dictate the narrative, but it does have to marry up with who you are in person. And personal brand and stuff online, great. In person will always be number one. Face to face, spending time with people, being in communities. Whisper that now. That is what matters, not just from a professional goals level, but just from a enjoyment of life.
Do you have any stories you can share about times when you've seen a personal brand completely change someone's business?
Oh, tons.
You must have loads, but I want to hear the example that stands out to you most. Because I can think of famous people I know where they were like, okay, they sold a business, they built a personal brand, and now suddenly they have a business empire off the personal brand plus the money from the business that they sold or whatever.
Well, you've got celebrities that are the best example of that, right? Okay. Ryan Reynolds bought a football team.
Oh my God, yeah, I know.
Bought a phone network, aviation gin.
Yes.
Sold all that. That's all based off his personal brand. Everyone loves the George Clooney example, which is the Dos Amigos vodka.
But let's talk about the on-the-ground small businesses that you work with, or even tech businesses that you know in London's startup ecosystem or whatever. Where does personal branding ever can it be the deciding factor so radically? And let me color what I mean a little bit. I know influencers who have started businesses and they've tried to leverage the fact that they're an influencer to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I have 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000 followers, even if you're by today's standards, that makes you that might even make you a nano influencer these days by today's standards. But and if there's really good engagement rate with those 20,000 people, great. I can sell my product to them, and then it doesn't really work, and you're like, oh.
Well, that's the thing, right? People don't trust influencers massively. Not the
you
traditional.
Think influencer trust has gone down too?
100%. When they started off flogging whitening toothpaste and all that kind of stuff, those kind of people, maybe the 17, 18-year-old kids see that and are like, that Love I Own stuff, so aspirational. Okay. But from a business standpoint, one of the problems, it's not really a problem, is you've got real businesses and LinkedIn businesses. And that's not to say LinkedIn businesses aren't real, but my whole business I have to admit it, it's a LinkedIn business. Mm-hmm. I built it up, I obviously had a bank of work I could show and I did free work to get examples. And it is a real business. Mm-hmm. But everything's been built on LinkedIn through my personal brand, through building relationships, having conversations, posting content, doing videos. Like, I'm a prime example. Now I'm getting to the point I'm like, right, I really need to become a real business. I'm looking at building a website, very adult.
Wow.
But 2 years without having a website, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the power of a personal brand. And you see it a lot on LinkedIn. It is the people who've built businesses there and got up to 5 figures, 6 figures, and they're only getting more and more because of it. And a lot of them are the personal branding agencies because they got in the game first. Mm-hmm. But I know results from clients and their clients, the opportunities that have come from these people who run Facebook ads, now being invited to speak at tons of events, getting clients from speaking at those events, going on podcasts, getting clients coming through the podcast, talking about the results they achieve on LinkedIn, whilst also connecting with the ideal clients. Mm. And that's pulling them into the funnel. Those people are seeing their results now because they're talking about it. It's not a sob story. Here's a case study from what we did with our clients. That's a story. It might not be the most exciting story, but it's speaking to the right person. And that's why I was saying the smaller focus is how you get real business results. Hence, figure out what you stand for, what you want to do, who you're talking to, what you can offer them.
I've really enjoyed this because this is more the direction I want to start taking the show, where we have a kind of overarching question, which is some dimension of this question of how do we cultivate a greater inner leader and use that to create greater results in our life, the results that we really want in our life. The narratives that we tell ourselves and the narrative that we choose to craft, or we choose, whether consciously or unconsciously choose to craft, is, I think, such a big part of that. You're really excellent at communicating ideas. You're a great storyteller. You've told us stories hilariously, maybe not surprisingly. So it's been really enjoyable that I've gotten to think through some of these thoughts, receive this from you, have some really powerful practical takeaways. So I really appreciate this, man. Thank you.
No worries. I think if we leave the people on that one note is reflect, which I admitted I've not even done, and you're working on yourself. But genuinely, it's tough. If you're listening to this, sit down tonight, write all your thoughts out on paper. What do you enjoy doing? Are you happy where you're at? Do you want to actually start telling your story, or are you just going to do it because it's the thing to do, or it's a trend? Will it provide the rewards or the results you want from life?
Yes.
And if so, then go for it. Research it, figure it out, and smash it.
I love that. I've got a closing question
Nice.
that I like to ask everyone on the show. So just as we wrap up, as you noticed, I started very philosophical, and that's something I like to do, that I'm getting better at. I'm trying to get better at preparing my guests for it. So clearly I need to do a bit better.
That's why I did the disclaimer. I'm not a therapist,
but yeah, exactly, all the time. And so it's another one of these philosophical questions. The show is called Lost and Searching, really designed to help us search for some of these important questions, like the kind of question we were answering today. And so, Jonny, I'd love to know, what is the biggest question in life, in your life, that you are still searching for the answer to?
What's the end result? Or what's the end goal?
For you.
Because
in your life, in your career,
I think in all of it. Because I'm very, again, from a place of privilege, I'm very comfortable in my life. I'm very happy. There's not much I would change. And when I say I want more, I don't mean in a greedy way. I just more from life. That doesn't mean more money. I want more adventures, more working with cool people. I want to build a business because it feels really cool building a project. And then imagine you get a team and you're people working on a goal together. So I've got all these steps, but no why behind that. Just because it feels exciting, it feels right. You spoke about that gut instinct earlier. And what's the gut instinct? It's processes in the brain feeling something. So that's my question. It's what's the end goal? Which I'm only 35, still feel fresh, youngish.
Nice.
So it's not like I need to have that. Thank you. It's not like I need to have that nailed down. But since we've been saying to people they need to figure out some of the bigger questions, whilst I've got those big four, I think it does. Where's it all going? I guess it's, what does the end result of a good life look for you? And when I say I don't know, I don't mean it in a dramatic way. I'm not like, I don't know, it's bad, because it's not bad. But I think it'd be good to have a grip. Otherwise, that's when you end up being one of those people who's just working on something till their deathbed.
Not realizing, tunnel visioning.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm very good at saying yes to hanging out with friends and doing this stuff, not letting it be all encompassing. But what's it all for, I think, is a good self-realization to work on.
And I think the answer to helping you figure that out is the answer you gave us a minute ago to the ask question, is taking the time to do so. My favorite time is first thing in the morning. I have my meditation time in the morning blocked out. And even if for someone it's a bit less serious than that, even if it's just 5 minutes instead of half an hour, even if it's just like a little journaling or just sitting there and doing nothing, it's in the nothingness that there is space for creativity to flow. We didn't get a chance to talk much about creativity, despite you being a creative. But I'm sure you know that it's when you're not trying to do that your brain finally starts to give you like creative thoughts that you can play with and work
Totally.
with.
Well, that's why people should do things, that gets them in a flow state that people always talk about, whether that's painting or meditating or doing dishes and stuff. It's those moments of silence or doing the mundane tasks where you actually find thoughts come in. Just make sure you've not got the TV on in the background.
Exactly,
you've not got headphones in. So all you've got is your thoughts. Go for a walk. No music, nothing. And then it'll come.
Love it. Johnny, I appreciate you, man. Where can people learn more about you? Where do you want to send people? If you don't have a website, so I have to ask.
Yeah, well, there's a website, but it's not ready yet. It's www.thestory.club. But you can just find me on LinkedIn, Jonny Rose. I think there's quite a few of us, but it says The Story Club underneath it. I'm guessing maybe the links will be in the episode description. There you go. There. So yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Pleasure.
And that's it.
Thanks for having me on.
Alrighty, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I hope you found it valuable. We've reached a number of really important milestones on this show already. It's only been a couple of months, but I'm so grateful to those of you who not only subscribe, but also who listen this far along, who leave the comments on posts, or who give me really powerful, beautiful messages in response. It's been a humbling journey, and there is so much more to come. If there's something about this episode and the question that we answered, or any of the learnings that you took away that you want to make sure someone else you know understands themselves, then please do share this episode with them, along with your reflections, teaching other people something that you learned, passing the information on, or even just writing it down for yourself. All help you retain the answers to this, and any inspiration it gave you even more. That's the purpose of all this, is to give you as much positive, powerful, impactful results as possible on your journey to developing your own inner leader from so many different dimensions, not just the one we've talked about today. So thank you so much for being here, sending lots of love, and here's to your success.